Stephen Port was a British serial killer who murdered 4 young men in East London between 2014 and 2015. He became known as the Grindr Killer after using dating apps to lure his victims. What makes this case especially disturbing is not only the crimes themselves, but how many chances there were to stop him. This is the full factual investigation into Stephen Port and how repeated failures allowed him to keep killing. Stephen Port lived alone in a flat in Barking, East London. On the surface, he appeared ordinary. He worked as a chef and kept largely to himself. Online, however, he was highly active on dating and escort websites, often using false names. He had a fixation on drugging men and exerting control over them. That fixation would soon turn deadly. On the night of the 17th of June 2014, 23-year-old Anthony Walgate travelled to meet Stephen Port. Anthony was a fashion student who sometimes worked as an escort. Port had contacted him online and arranged to pay him for the night. Anthony never returned home. In the early hours of 19th June, Stephen Port called emergency services. He claimed he had discovered an unconscious man outside his building. That man was Anthony Walgate. Paramedics arrived to find Anthony already dead, propped against a wall near the entrance to Port's block of flats. Almost immediately, aspects of the scene appeared unusual. Anthony's clothing was disordered. His boxer shorts were inside out and back to front. His jeans were unfastened and damaged. There was bruising beneath his arms, suggesting his body may have been moved. Despite these signs, police initially treated the death as a possible drug overdose rather than a homicide. A post-mortem examination later confirmed Anthony had died from a fatal dose of GHB. GHB is a powerful drug often used in drug-facilitated sexual assaults. Stephen Port claimed Anthony had taken the drug willingly. Police accepted this explanation. Port's account soon began to fall apart. Officers discovered that Port himself had arranged to meet Anthony online. This directly contradicted his claim of finding a stranger. Port was arrested, but only for lying to police. He was charged with perverting the course of justice and released on bail. Crucially, police did not treat Anthony Walgate's death as murder. A full investigation was never carried out. Port's background was not properly examined, despite his admission that he had previously been investigated for a sexual offence. Digital devices were seized, but not fully analysed. Stephen Port was now free. Less than 2 months later, he killed again. In August 2014, 22-year-old Gabriel Kavari moved to London from Slovakia. He met Port online and accepted an offer to stay at his flat. Within days of arriving, Gabriel was dead. His body was found in a nearby churchyard, positioned upright against a wall. Police again treated the death as non-suspicious. The area was not secured as a crime scene. No full forensic examination took place. Gabriel's death was attributed to drugs, despite no clear evidence that he used them. Gabriel's friends became alarmed. They contacted police to explain that Gabriel had been staying with Stephen Port. They provided photos taken inside Port's flat. Their warnings were dismissed and no action was taken. Just weeks later, Stephen Port killed for a third time. In September 2014, 21-year-old Daniel Whitworth met Stephen Port. Daniel was a chef with a long-term partner and no history of drug use. He was found dead in the same churchyard as Gabriel, positioned in the same way. A handwritten note was found in Daniel's hand. It appeared to be a suicide note, claiming Daniel had accidentally killed Gabriel and could not live with the guilt. Police accepted the note as genuine and closed the case. The note was a lie. Daniel and Gabriel had never met. The handwriting was later proven not to be Daniel's. Stephen Port had written the note himself. At the time, police did not question it. Critical forensic tests were never carried out. DNA evidence was not analysed. A bedsheet found with Daniel's body was not properly examined. Once again, opportunities to identify Port as the killer were missed. By the end of 2014, Stephen Port had murdered 3 men. He had been questioned by police multiple times and remained free. In March 2015, Port was sentenced to 8 months in prison, not for murder, but for lying to police. By then, 3 young men were already dead. Even while Port was imprisoned, no wider review linked the deaths together. Port was released in June 2015. Within months, he killed again. In September 2015, 25-year-old Jack Taylor met Stephen Port through a dating app. Jack was strongly anti-drugs and hoped to join the police. He was last seen alive on CCTV walking with Port. Jack's body was found the following day in the same churchyard. Police initially suggested a drug overdose. Jack's family immediately challenged this explanation. Jack's sisters began their own investigation. They noticed the pattern police had missed. They identified Stephen Port as the last person Jack met and provided his details to officers. The breakthrough came when an officer reviewing CCTV footage recognized Stephen Port from an earlier case. For the first time, the deaths were finally linked. Stephen Port was arrested in October 2015. Forensic testing quickly exposed the truth. DNA evidence tied him directly to multiple victims. The fake suicide note was traced back to him. In November 2016, Stephen Port was convicted of murdering Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth and Jack Taylor. He was sentenced to a whole life order, meaning he will never be released. After the trial, attention turned to the investigation itself. Families argued Port should have been stopped after the first death. A later inquest concluded that fundamental investigative failures probably contributed to the deaths of 3 of the 4 victims. Evidence was missed. Warnings were ignored. The Metropolitan Police accepted serious failings and issued formal apologies. Reforms were promised. Officers involved were later referred for misconduct investigations. The Stephen Port case stands as one of the most serious investigative failures in modern British criminal history. 4 young men lost their lives, not only because of a killer, but because the system meant to protect them failed. Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth, Jack Taylor. They are remembered not for how they died, but for who they were. Sons, brothers, partners, friends. This case is a warning. Patterns must be questioned. Voices must be heard. No death should ever be dismissed. Because when warning signs are ignored, the cost is measured in lives.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like. It really helps the channel and tells YouTube to share it with more people. If you're interested in more true crime stories, police investigations, and the cases that changed Britain forever, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. Thanks for watching.